And we are live. The Big Stick Policy Podcast back again, episode 5. This time, James Monroe. I'm your host, Sean, and I'm here with my co-host, Graham. Graham, say hi to the people.
How we doing?
You doing pretty good? So, like I said before, we are on our 5th episode, big number 5, and as always, we're going in chronological order of our presidents, and we are going to be talking about James Monroe today. Graham, how do you feel about James Monroe?
I'd say, kind of with Madison, I don't mean to, diss on the homie, but
Hmm.
I don't really know a lot about James Monroe. Like, I know the
No.
basic stuff, but, before I had to do this episode, I'll be honest, I had to do a little research just to catch up,
I
because
also
it
did a
has
little
been a
research.
while since we learned about Monroe in class.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
But I would say, solid dude. I would
solid
say
dude.
I like I like most of his policies.
Mhm.
Good guy.
So, let me ask you just real quick before we get into him. If you were to rank the first 5 presidents, how would you rank them? How would you rank them?
How would I rank them?
Yeah.
Okay, definitely Washington number 1.
Hmm.
And then I would say Jefferson number 2.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Really?
I'm a big Jefferson guy.
Really?
I'm a big Jefferson guy.
Damn. Okay. 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 Now, who's
Um,
number 3?
I probably just pick John Adams. I feel like John
Mm-hmm.
Adams would be a solid 3.
Mm-hmm.
Probably then James Madison and then James Monroe.
All right. All right.
I think that's how I go.
That's respectable. That's respectable. I would probably rank Monroe and Madison a little higher. Washington's obviously number 1. There's no doubt about that.
Clearly.
I'm actually gonna go. I'm gonna go Washington, Monroe, Madison, Adams, then Jefferson last.
Really.
I'm not rocking with Jefferson as president. Good founding father. Knew what he was doing. He just I don't know. He's very mediocre in the
Very
presidency in
interesting.
terms of myself. Well, yeah. What were you say? What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, now that you say it, I think I might want to reorder. I think I would bump James Madison up a few. I
You
think I
bumped
might say
James, you bumped Madison
he's
up.
I would say he's number 3. I would
All
say
right.
he's my number 3.
Hmm.
Adams number 4. Monroe number 5.
Ah.
I think
Monroe number 5.
yeah, you know how it is.
Not to be confused with Mambo number 5.
Of course not.
Monroe number 5. Make that a thing, please. Someone please make that a thing if you're listening. All right, so let's get into Monroe. Um, all right, so first of all, 5th president, obviously. One thing I do remember is that he is the last founding father to become president.
Really?
Really? Yeah, because after Monroe, we get JQA, right? We get
Oh,
JQA,
oh yeah.
John Quincy Adams, the first son of a president to become president.
Very
If
interesting.
I had a nickel for every time the son of a president became president, I would have 2 nickels, which is weird because it happened twice.
That is very weird.
That is very weird. We'll get into that second guy very very much later in the future. He's a character, but
Y'all
right
rocking
now,
with Bush?
y'all rocking with Bush 43. Oh man. All right. Monroe. So last founding father to be president. He was governor for Virginia for a bit. He served in Congress a little bit. He did his thing. He did his thing. But he had some pretty good accomplishments as president. Before he was president, he served in the Madison administration, I believe, as Secretary of State. I want to say Secretary of State.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Maybe I think he served as Secretary of War for someone a little bit too. But yeah.
He is the Secretary of State for Madison.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, he's Secretary of State for Madison. But he has a few accomplishments during his time as president. A lot of important things. One very, very important thing that he's kind of known for and holds a certain place in my heart because it helps to influence the policy that we would name our podcast over. Isn't that right, Graham?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Big
Oh
stick
yeah.
policy. Rep the big stick policy, Graham.
Always
You gotta rep
repping.
it. But I'll let you take it for a little bit Because I know you have a few things lined up you want to talk about. A
Oh,
few.
you will.
Yeah,
How kind of you.
I will. I will. Very kind of me. Thank you. Thank you very much. But I'll let you take the wheel. They say Jesus take the wheel. You, in many ways, are Jesus.
Appreciate it.
I know because, dude, you have a following, right?
Yeah, of course.
You do have a
I
following.
yeah, have a devout following, I
You've
think.
devout following. Would you
Yeah,
consider yourself a cult leader, Graham?
sometimes.
Sometimes.
I feel like
Oh
it.
man, yeah. Cults are kind of cool.
I would call it more of an entourage and not a
An
cult.
entourage.
Yeah,
That's interesting. It's
yeah.
interesting. But anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm gonna let you take it away. So yeah, go ahead. What do you want to talk about? James
Right.
Monroe.
So we know that Monroe takes office in 1817,
Mm,
and one of the first things I want to talk about is in 1819, the
yeah.
Missouri Compromise happens.
Wow.
And so, as we know before, the United States, you know, starts off with a little slavery, and we talk about how most northern states don't have slavery, while a lot of southern states have slavery. These are free and slave states.
Mm,
So, in 1819, a bill is enabled for the Missouri Territory. There's enough people living there that they want to make it a state. The issue, though, is that Missouri wants to be a slave state,
mm,
and there are a lot of disagreements, a lot of strife over it because a lot of congressmen are afraid that this will upset the balance of free and slave states. There will be one more slave state than free states, and they're afraid that Southerners, slave owners will have more control in the government because there's more representation for slave states.
mm,
So for this agreement to work, Maine is also introduced as a state. However, it's introduced as a free state. And this is seen as a way to kind of even everything out because Northerners were like, this isn't fair. They can't come in as a slave state. It's going to upset the whole balance. The South is going to take over. And a lot of people weren't with that. And this is actually going to lead to a lot of further problems down the road. But for now, it stops the issue of expanding slavery by just saying, hey, we're going to add one slave state, one free state, everything's good. So for now, it's calmed down, but later on, we'll learn as more states are added, more want to become slaves, some don't want to become slave, and we'll learn
mm.
about that a little bit later.
All right.
So
All
the
right.
next thing to come after the Missouri Compromise is the Panic of 1819. And so the Panic of 1819 is the first major depression to hit the United States after the
Mm,
ratification of the Constitution.
yeah.
What do you think about panics, Sean?
Dude, what I think about panics, dude, I think Panic at the Disco makes pretty good music.
I, yeah, I would agree.
I
I
would
would say
agree. You ever hear High Hopes by Panic at the Disco?
that's pretty good. What would you
That's a
say?
good
Is that
song.
your favorite Panic at the Disco song, you
Um,
think?
Probably. It's the only one I can think of right
The only
now.
one, yeah.
There's another one I listen to. I just forget what the name of it is, but I rock with them.
I like
Now,
that. Yeah, I would say they're a pretty solid group.
let me ask you something, Graham. I just
Okay.
called you Graham. Graham, like
You good
Lindsey
dog.
Graham.
Right
No,
on.
no, no. But I'm wondering. You rocking with Maine?
Yeah, I rock with Maine.
You rock with Maine?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, like, I've never been there, but like, I don't have a reason not to like Maine. I
Yeah,
would say.
yeah, yeah.
What about you?
Maine.
You not rocking with
No,
Maine?
I rock with it. Maine actually used to be part of Massachusetts.
Really?
Yeah, that's why they basically just broke off and made it their own state. That's why they had the whole free
That's
slave state
crazy.
thing. Yeah, it's pretty.
Would you say they seceded?
They just no, they just kind of
No,
split up. Well, they didn't really secede.
they separated
They
from.
did separate, but I mean, like it was like a mutual thing.
All right.
Like you ever see Maine and like next to Massachusetts? They're like
Yeah.
it's just like a little. They're connected by like a little hair. Or
Huh.
I don't even know if they're connected at all. I don't even. How does that work?
What do you mean? Like, how do they separate states?
Not like geography.
How does geography work?
Yeah,
It's a good one.
it's a good question, right?
It's a good question.
Like, what even is land?
I don't know,
You
dude.
rocking with land, Graham?
I rock with it. Yeah,
Are you big?
I would say.
You fan of the free or the slave states?
I would say I'm a fan of the free
Dude,
states.
I'm a fan of the free states.
Yeah,
dude.
I
Like,
would hope everybody's a fan of the free
me,
states.
me, me too. You know, but you gotta ask and make sure.
I guess
You
that
know,
makes sense. That's a fair question.
because the only Confederacy I support is the Confederacy of Independent Systems from Star
Okay.
Wars. You know the battle droids?
Yeah, I know the battle
Dude,
droids.
those guys are funny.
They were funny.
Too bad they're bad at their jobs. Like you get like 200 of them. You send in some like monk with a laser sword, and they just chop all their heads
It's
off.
ridiculous.
Yo,
You think in the future they'd be like you'd ever watch the Terminator, right? Like how come
dude,
they're not like the
Terminator. Yeah, how
Terminator?
come they're not like the Terminator? What is that? Why they even?
You
I
think
don't
the
know.
Terminator came before or after Star? I would have to say it had to come before Star Wars, right?
Did it? I don't even
I
know,
would feel
bro.
like Star Wars was too
Well, I
advanced, you
mean, like
know?
the Star Wars with the battle droids. I mean, like that came
Hmm.
out in 1999. You know, Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I know Phantom Menace.
Yeah, that had Liam Neeson in it, right?
I did know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right. We gotta get back on track, bro.
Back to
What do you got? What do you got? We were
so
talking
we're
about
talking about the
panics.
panic
We're
of
talking about
eighteen-19.
Panic at the Disco of 1819. Go ahead.
So it's saying the panic, it starts from declining imports and exports and a lowering of agricultural prices at global markets. And this was because, America was at peace, so they had to restart everything, they had to readjust their prices. So it it did hit the US pretty hard.
Mm,
It was another thing was it was fueled by unrestrained issue of paper money from banks and business concerns. And this was back when remember when money was tough. We were still figuring out, how the banks were going to work and everything.
mm-hmm,
And the other issue was that Monroe and the government really lacked the power to really intervene directly in the economy. They can't like handle this
mm,
directly.
mm.
And because the banks are regulated by the states, it's very the government doesn't have a big hand in this.
Yeah.
So what happens is a lot of people, a lot of business owners are like, hey, this is because of the tariff rates that we have. And they're saying, well, if we increase the tariff rates, hopefully this will balance everything out and fix everything.
Yeah.
So as the panic continues to increase, Monroe calls Congress together, and Congress they agree with this. So they decide to increase the tariff. And this does ultimately help. It's not an immediate fix, but it slowly helps the U.S. get back to normal. So this was important because this was really the first major depression that the United States had ever faced, and it won't be the last.
Mm. Very.
So the final thing that I want to hit on was the acquisition of Florida, and this is an important part of this is America's slow approach to gaining all the territories and completing the United States.
Mm.
So Spain ultimately, initially, they were in Florida. And America had repeatedly tried to be like, hey, why don't we, why can't we have Florida? We'll give you good money for it. And Spain's always been like, no. And so now around in Monroe's time, Spain is facing a couple of problems. They're facing a war in Europe. They need to and they're facing, they need a lot of enemies. They need to rebuild their country. They need to rebuild their colonies. And they're also facing other countries like within them trying to gain independence.
Mm.
And at this point, they kind of lose interest in Florida. It's not as good a use to them as it was before.
Yeah.
And the other issue is the borders. And Spain is also being attacked from the inside by Native Americans.
Mm.
So this is Spain is finally at a point where they're like, you know what? It's not worth it to hold on to Florida anymore. And Spain knows that America wants it. So they're like, hey,
America wants
you
it,
want this? And
dude.
Monroe's like, do we want this?
Do we
Of
want this?
course we
Absolutely.
want Florida.
Oh yeah.
It would be stupid not to take it.
Yeah.
So, but one of the issues is that there's a lot of Native Americans in it. And so Monroe is like, all right, we got to solve this problem. So he sends in some military figures, including our boy, I would say, public enemy number one among the Native Americans,
Oh
Andrew
yeah.
Jackson.
Yeah.
And let's just say Andrew Jackson's not a big fan of Native Americans.
He ain't rocking with the natives.
He's not rocking with the
I think
natives.
I think he's the definition of not rocking with the Native
I would
Americans.
agree. He's the definition of not rocking with the natives. And so Jackson and the boys pull up, and let's just say they eliminate the problem.
They eliminate the problem. Yeah.
They got rid of it.
They, you,
And
you could
this
say
is
that.
important. This comes up later in Jackson's career, but a lot of people in Congress do not like how this was handled. And interesting enough, Monroe supports Jackson. He was behind Jackson 100% of the way. And
Mm,
Congress is big on this. They're like, hey, this is almost like war almost. And we didn't declare war, so you don't have any right to, attack these people and take such aggressive actions.
mm,
But Monroe defends him, saying, "Hey, this is our country. This isn't war. This is us playing defense. This is us protecting what is ours." And so this is once the Native Americans have been neutralized. The United States, Monroe begins talking with Spain about Florida.
mm.
And so what happens ultimately is the United States and Spain sign the Adams-Onis Treaty, which
Yeah.
pretty much gives Florida to the United States and for in exchange for money, about $5 million. It also, the other important aspect of it is the treaty also shows a defined boundary between Spanish and American possessions and land. And this is important because later on we're going to have some issues that we'll talk about later about the
Yeah.
border.
At the border. We'll
And
talk about
that's
that.
pretty much wraps up some of the important highlights of Monroe's career. So I'll hand it over to you, Sean,
All
for the
right.
big fish of Monroe's career.
Big fish. All right. So yeah, so we're talking a lot about Spain. We're actually gonna keep talking about Spain with this next part. Now, this is pretty much what Monroe is known for. Well, it has his name in it. It is the Monroe Doctrine. Now, Graham, the Monroe Doctrine holds a very special place in our hearts. Do you want to know why? I think you know why, but do you want to know why?
Because it's the basis
It's the
for
basis
the big stick.
for the big stick policy. That is correct, Graham.
And
So
Sean and I rock with a lot of things,
we rock with a lot of things. One of
but the
them
thing we rock the most with
is the big stick policy.
is the big stick
Clearly,
policy.
clearly. So, what is the Monroe Doctrine? So I'll tell you guys how it came about. So it's the mid to early 1800s. So there's a bunch of countries now in Latin America and South America, and they were controlled by none other than the definition of countries that fell off, Spain. So these countries, they see us, they see the United States, they're like, hey, they declared their independence from their European power. Why don't we do the same? So a bunch of Latin American countries declare their independence from Spain because Spain is pretty much who controls them, and Spain isn't rocking with this obviously because they want to be a colonial power. They want to hold on to their bunch of stuff, and then they're pretty scared about these colonies declaring independence because a lot of other countries are gonna be like, hey, what about our other colonies? Are they gonna start getting ideas? But the United States, they come in and they're like, yo, Europe, you guys need to stay out of the Western Hemisphere for good, or else we're going to throw hands with you. And that becomes the Monroe Doctrine, where basically we are going to support Latin American countries who declare their independence and want to set up a democratic system of government, which is it's pretty cool of us to do. But later on we get involved in a lot of Latin American affairs, obviously. A lot during like the late 1800s, early 1900s. But pretty much, even though it's like a baseless claim of the Monroe Doctrine, because we have like no military power at this time, especially after coming out of the War of 1812, um, a lot of the European powers actually stay out of the Western Hemisphere by some miraculous reason. And the Monroe Doctrine pretty much stays in place until obviously our boy uh, Teddy Big Stick Roosevelt employs the big stick policy. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's pretty much known for the Monroe Doctrine. Like that's his thing. Like if you take anything from this, that Monroe had the Monroe Doctrine. That's a big foreign affairs thing with our boy Monroe. So, we're actually going to take the podcast in a little different direction this time because we have a new segment. I think you guys know we mentioned it last time. We did a real quick recap of me, the host Sean, fighting presidents. So now we're turning that into a segment, and it's going to be hosted by none other than our good friend Tyler. So Tyler, if you want to hop in, and you can do your shtick. Say hi to the
All
people,
right.
Tyler. What's up, Tyler?
Hello. Thank you guys for having me.
It's
Of
our
course.
pleasure. It's our pleasure to have you.
All
So
right. So,
wait, first I want to tell the people I'm going to put up the image of
right.
my stats fighting James Monroe up right now.
Right. So
So
on your screen, you should see a little infographic of James Monroe versus Sean.
mhm.
So looking at the statistics, James Monroe stands at a surprising 6 foot at a solid 189 pounds. And
Mm.
that's pretty hefty for a
That's a
6 foot person.
pretty big
So
boy.
so Sean, obviously solid height, young age. Monroe on the older side, right? So as you look at Monroe's stats, his are going to be a little lower because of his old age. But the reason that Monroe's attack is higher than Sean's is because Monroe was in fact at the age of 18, he was in the Continental Army,
Mm.
right? So he was an officer in the Continental Army. So we can assume he has a lot of experience in fighting some sort of way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But due to his old age, that has gone down, and he's probably not going to stack up well against an 18-year-old 6'3" young adult, as we can assume. So
Look at that
yeah,
picture of me, guys. Look at that picture of me.
so
I am looking
so
amazing in that.
it's a pretty good picture. So
Thank you.
my take, I have Sean beating Monroe by a solid margin.
Mm, very good. So,
Okay, Sean,
if we're
big
gonna,
man.
just for the recap, I beat Adams easily, easily. The man's a mole rat. Okay. I beat Jefferson. I beat Madison, and I beat Monroe. So far, I've only
Well,
lost to Washington.
do you know how short Madison is?
Madison's a small dude. He's
He
like
is tiny.
he's like
He's
five
pretty
four, right?
small.
Yeah.
He is 5'4". So that would have been interesting. I don't really. I mean, you got that length,
I
You
do
have the
have that length.
reach.
I do have that reach.
I don't know if anyone else can really beat that.
There's some people I know that are gonna be pretty close matches. Some of them obviously are gonna beat me,
Right.
obviously,
Well,
because
we got a few we got a few hefty ones coming up, so
we do
those would
have
be exciting.
we have one coming up soon in the coming weeks that I think is gonna be an interesting matchup. But overall, these are the stats. I'm currently 4-1 against the presidents. We'll eventually see how far I go um with these fights, but it's very interesting to see yourself stacked up against presidents, isn't it, Graham?
It is very
It's
interesting.
very
I couldn't
very
imagine
interesting.
myself doing it.
You couldn't imagine? Well, sometimes when duty calls, you just gotta take up the challenge, just beat the crap out of some old men, many of whom are dead at the current moment. But now Tyler, I have a question. Are we stacking them up against me when they're president, like in that time frame, or just in general?
Yes, so the stats we have here at age 59 is when Monroe took office.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we were going off of. So
Mm-hmm.
I think a younger Monroe would have been a way different story. I don't think you would have had a chance against him,
That's very true.
but when he entered office, I think you have a very good chance of beating him.
Mm-hmm. So we will be so it's like it's their first day as president.
First day in office,
They walk into the Oval Office, and who is there but yours truly, ready to fight them? It's their final challenge. If they,
that's right.
it's a rite of passage of becoming president. They freeze
That's
me
how they become
like
reelected.
how in Captain America 2 they have the Winter Soldier, and they like kind of put him in cryostasis, and then they
Yes.
just bring him out whenever they need him. So that's me. So like whenever we get a new president, they just unfreeze me, and then I fight the guy, and then they freeze me.
That's
But
crazy.
that's crazy, dude. I'm literally the Winter Soldier now. That's pretty sick.
It's pretty cool.
That is pretty
Pretty
cool.
sick.
It's pretty cool. Well, thank you, Tyler, for coming on. It's
Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited for next week.
absolutely wonderful. Well, this is
Yeah,
going to be a
same.
recurring segment. Tyler will keep up with these infographics, and we'll see how I stack up against our next guy, John Quincy Adams, son of
Mm.
John Adams. That's gonna be a fun matchup. I beat the crap out of his dad. Let's see if I'll beat the crap out of him too.
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
All
Thank you
right.
guys.
No problem. No problem.
of
It's our
course.
pleasure. It's our
Thank you for
pleasure.
coming.
Thank you for coming. So yeah, Monroe. Pretty interesting individual, if I gotta say. I didn't know a lot about him. I've heard of him, obviously, but learning more about him has been a treat. It really makes you appreciate some of the stuff he's done.
It really does.
Now, we've got a few minutes left, so I'm just gonna throw something out there, Graham. You rocking
Oh
with Florida?
yeah, I'm rocking with Florida.
He did get
Sometimes.
Florida. The man literally acquired the most insane state in the union.
Oh yeah,
Like, have you seen the stuff that goes on in Florida?
I have seen.
It's
a
crazy.
few things.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
I'm pretty sure in like the winter, all of like their like iguanas, because they have iguanas that live in trees, right? They freeze and fall out of the trees. So you just see
How
like
do they freeze in Florida?
I don't know, they're iguanas. They just get kind of
That's
cold.
crazy. They
Like
stupid.
the temperature drops to 60 and they freeze or
Damn.
something. It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah,
Or iguanas.
iguanas be tripping. Let me tell you. You know what else they got in Florida, Graham?
What else they got?
They had gators, dude.
I seen an alligator and
You've seen alligators.
I did see one. It was walking down the street one time when I seen my grandparents. I'm being serious.
Dude was walking down like the middle
Homie
of the
was
street,
walking
or
down
like
the street.
was he on the sidewalk?
No, he was in the middle of the street. He did not care.
So you're telling me that there are not only crocodile or no, not crocodiles, alligators in Florida that do not obey traffic laws?
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah, he had no regard for any
man had no
civil
regard
safety.
for civil safety. Well, that's a tragedy,
It
That is
was.
that's not a model citizen. I ain't
Absolutely
I
not.
ain't rocking with that gator, man.
You ain't rocking with that?
I'm not rocking with him at all.
Understandable. I wouldn't be
At,
rocking with it either.
no one should be rocking with him. He's sounds like a pretty poor
Got
individual.
no right rocking with that.
You know, that's pretty cool. But what else can we mention about Monroe? We got a few states admitted to the Union. We do get Florida. Florida doesn't become a state yet; it becomes a territory. But let me see what states. So what kind of states we got in the Union? We got Mississippi first, Illinois, Alabama, Maine, obviously, and Missouri from the Missouri Compromise. So we got 5 new states in the Union. We're trekking through the Louisiana Purchase, having some of those states admitted to the Union. It's country's growing, man. Country is growing as we go through these presidents, and we'll keep going until eventually country gets too big, and we go to war about slavery,
yeah.
and half the country is pitted against the other country, and the other half of the country, which makes their own country, which lasts like 4 years, and we gets completely smashed. As our Apish teacher once said, it got absolutely schlacked by the Union. Schlacked. What do you think of that? That we shellacked them, and we'll get to there. We'll get to there once we get to those presidents. We're coming up almost to the end of the era of good feelings. Unfortunately, the era of good feelings was quite the era. I really did like. It's got such a cheery vibe to it. Even though there's like a bunch of weird stuff going on. But yeah, overall, Monroe I'd rank pretty. I'd say slightly above average as president. Slightly above average. It was no way bad at all. He wasn't like super good. He didn't blow me away. But I rock with Monroe. I rock with Monroe.
I rock with Monroe too.
You rock with Monroe?
Oh yeah.
I rock with Monroe. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for this podcast, Big Stick Policy, episode 5. James Monroe. We're wrapping it up right now. We will see you guys next week where we talk about James Quincy Adams. No, I just said James Quincy Adams. No. John Quincy Adams. I just combined James Monroe and JQA. But yes, this is Big Stick Policy signing off. We'll see you next week, guys.